Layla Maffei. This list is ordered by age at which young mothers gave birth, but if it was set by the level of depravity, then Layla Maffei would be right at number 1. Layla from Iran was only 8 years old when her own brothers started paying their mother for the chance to have sex with her. Yes, you heard that right. Layla's mother didn't just know her sons were abusing their sister. She charged them money for the privilege. I can't even process the level of disgusting that is. To make matters worse, if that's even possible, Layla suffered from a developmental disability, being assessed as mentally the age of 8 at 19. Layla was only 9 years old when her first child was born, twins following when she was 14. Her brothers were caught and flogged for their crimes. Layla, on the other hand, was sentenced to death for illegal sex and incest. Thank God a lawyer from Amnesty stopped the execution and finally got Layla the help she needed. Number 9. Daphne. On January 27, 2013, a beautiful baby girl was born via cesarean section. She weighed 5.7 pounds and was approximately 19 inches long. By all accounts, this was a perfectly normal, healthy child. There was just one tiny difference. Her mother, known only as Daphne, was 9 years old. Daphne's parents claimed they didn't report the unusual and alarming pregnancy because the father was Daphne's 17-year-old boyfriend. Apparently, they saw that as a perfectly okay and consensual relationship. At first, it looked like a case of extremely bad judgment on her parents' part, but the more people dug into the story, the worse it got. Police couldn't seem to find this supposed boyfriend, and when they separated her from her parents, Daphne was adamant that the father of her child was actually her own 56-year-old father. Classy, huh? For God knows what reason, authorities allowed Daphne and her baby to go home with her parents, and just a warning that they'd frequently be dropping by. Number 8. Anna Mumenthaler. Precocious puberty is the term for a child who hits puberty earlier than is considered normal. The average age for young boys is somewhere between 9 and 12, while girls will usually begin menstruation around 8 to 11. In the case of Anna Mumenthaler of Switzerland, she was only 2 years old when she had her first period. This crazy fact ensured that Anna was a frequent flyer with her physician, Dr. G.E. von Haller. Not surprisingly, she did everything a little too early, including menopause at 52 and dying at age 75. But perhaps her most well-known achievement was the age at which she became a mother. She was only 8 years, 9 months old when she gave birth to an unfortunately stillborn baby girl. The father of the child was identified as a friend of her father's. I certainly hope they never allowed him anywhere near Anna again, and that he, went to jail, because that's exactly where a monster like that belongs. Number 7. Hilda Trujillo. Hilda Trujillo was the daughter of a humble servant. She lived in a one-bedroom house in Peru with several family members, including a 22-year-old cousin who came to live with them when he needed a soft spot to land. Unfortunately, the pig landed right on top of Hilda. At first, her parents suspected nothing. But when the nearly 8-year-old girl became increasingly sick, her mother went to their mistress and begged for help. Doctors were shocked to find that Hilda was already 5 months pregnant. On December 2nd, 1957, at 8 years, 7 months old, Hilda gave birth to a tiny baby girl she named Maria del Rosario. At just over 9 pounds, Maria was delivered a month early, the old-fashioned way, and was a healthy, normal baby, aside from the age of her mother. As for Hilda's cousin, that creep was tossed in jail, where I hope he spends the rest of his days being nibbled away at by rats. Number 6. Anya. Being unable to stop someone from hurting your child is every good parent's worst nightmare. But that nightmare turned out to be more than just a bad dream for the parents of a little girl in Russia. Little Miss Anya was an early bloomer, hitting puberty at just 7 years old. It wasn't long after that her neighbor, a 13-year-old boy, took a rather pointed and unhealthy interest in the young girl. I think we can all agree that 13 is plenty old enough to know basic rights from wrongs, so you can bet her neighbor knew what he was doing when he raped her. Her family only became aware of the situation when Anya really started to show signs of pregnancy. I'd imagine they thought she was just getting a little fat, or maybe she had a tumor. They never expected their little girl to have her own little girl. She was 8 years, 7 months old when she gave birth to her daughter in April of 2000. Number 5. Colombian girl in 2004. It's not very often that a cop pegs you as a drug smuggler and ends up doing you more help than hurt, but that's exactly what happened to an unnamed girl in Colombia. A passing officer noticed her tight, swollen belly and immediately arrested her and her mother. He expected to find the poor girl stuffed full of bags of cocaine, but not in a million years did he imagine that X-rays would show a much darker story. This innocent child wasn't smuggling drugs at all. Instead, it was discovered that she was already 32 weeks or 7 months pregnant. 7 months, 7 whole months! As it turned out, she'd been raped by some poor excuse of a human being while picking up medicine for her sick mother. The crime was considered too embarrassing for her family to report. On October 11th in 2004, she gave birth at the Meeson Hospital. She was 8 years and 5 months old. Her attacker never faced a single charge. Number 4. Mumsy. It can be difficult for us sometimes to understand why other cultures do things the way they do. There are so many different ways to go through life, different foods we will and won't eat, and sometimes cultures flat out disagree on what counts as normal. In certain parts of Africa, a chief collecting a harem of young girls is completely par for the course, and there are certainly multiple cultures that practice polygamy involving all ages. But many of us would object to a grown man making an 8-year-old his wife, regardless of whether or not her parents were on board with the idea. Yup, a grown man marrying children less than half his age is apparently a thing. Normally, these young girls do not conceive for their husbands until at least their teenage years. But for Mumsy, motherhood came at the tender age of 8 years and 4 months. Her daughter also conceived ridiculously early, making Mumsy into a grandmother at age 17. Number 3. H. Out of all the girls on our list so far, they share one thing. They have gone through puberty. Each of these girls matured at an unusually young age, some of them incredibly so. But a 6-year-old girl in India, identified only as H, puts herself at an unusual place in history for being the only known girl who never actually menstruated before conceiving her first child. H was rushed to the hospital with a distended stomach and abdominal pains. Doctors assumed she had a tumor until their scans revealed she was in fact pregnant. Her baby, a 4-pound girl, was delivered via cesarean section, and despite not having developed much mammary tissue yet, she was still able to nurse her child for a full 9 months. H was only 6 years 7 months old. The father of her child was never publicly known, nor was any indication given that it was privately known. But you can bet it wasn't a voluntary kind of situation. Number 2. Yelizaveta Grushenko. Liza was a few days shy of her 6th birthday when she was rushed to a hospital in Russia to deliver a baby. It came as no surprise to anyone that it was a long, difficult labor. Her hips and birthing channel were not yet fully developed and the baby was basically stuck inside her. But C-sections were considered extremely risky back in 1934. So, in compliance with her parents' wishes and with the help of forceps, Liza's child was eventually dragged from her body. The baby unfortunately died during the process due to lack of oxygen directly related to the length of the labor. Had they been allowed to act more quickly, doctors may have been able to save the child. However, what made this particular case so disturbing was the identity of father of her child. You might be tempted to suspect her dad, but no, it's worse. The subhuman monster who impregnated such a young child was Liza's own 70-year-old grandfather. Number 1. Lena Medina. Lena Medina went down in history as the youngest mother of all time. Her parents brought her to the hospital due to a rapidly swelling stomach. Instead of the tumor they expected to find, doctors were shocked to discover that Lena was 7 months pregnant. They literally had to send her to a specialist to double confirm the diagnosis because, you see, Lena was just about halfway over 5 years old. Apparently, she went through puberty somewhere between the ages of 2 and 3, and by age 5, she already had fairly well-developed breasts. Talk about growing up fast. A month and a half after the discovery of her pregnancy, doctors delivered a healthy baby boy via cesarean section. She was just 5 years, 7 months, and 21 days old. Pretty much literally a baby herself having a baby. That was back in May of 1939. The identity of the man who raped her remains a mystery to this day. Hopefully he died a slow, painful death. Were you shocked by any of these young mothers? What do you think the authorities should have done to the fathers? Slow death, I hope. Let us know in the comments down below, and thanks for watching.